people, this is John with Ozarks Back Roads with you today. We're in the garage. I hope the holidays were good for everybody. We're doing a little project today on the Kawasaki Versys 1000 here. We're going to change out the stock halogen headlight bulbs for some LED headlight bulbs. So stick around, we'll see if we can make this work. We've got some beam techs here that I've gotten off of Amazon. I'm not sure if that was the smartest thing to do, but that's what I did. We're going to test them out and see how they work. See how they work in the Versys anyhow. These beam tech LEDs that we're putting in are 20 watts each, as opposed to the halogens, which are either 50 or 55 watts. So we're going to save over half the power here and have a brighter light, hopefully, if all this works well. So 20 watts versus 50 or 55 watts. So when you go to add non-electrical accessories on your bike and using power, this is something you can do. The reason I'm doing it is just to reduce the power load on my stator, on my charging system. I've added quite a few things. Well, this will drop a couple of 3 amps, 2.5 amps or so on low beam, and 5 amps on high beam. So that's pretty good power savings. You know, I think the heated grips were only like 2 amps at max. So I can get all that back just on the low beam. So that's why I'm doing it. Here's our bulbs here. We've got a little module here that inline, little controller, passive cooling. There's no fan in these. They've just got the elements double-sided, and then your regular plug that goes on the back of your existing bulb plugs in here, and then they've got a double LED set on either side of the mount here to kind of emulate the filament in your halogen bulb. So hopefully we can get a similar pattern out of these as we're getting out of the pattern right now. So we'll take a look at the pattern on the garage door and give us some kind of a benchmark, and then we'll see if we can set these up and make them look the same. Okay, I've kind of marked off the pattern here on the door. This is the low beam pattern here, which is just the right hand light, and I kind of marked the top of it there with 4 pieces of tape, kind of where the top of the beam cuts off, and then the hot spot on it I marked with a small piece of tape for low beam there. And then the high beam comes in, I marked the hot spot on it. It's over to the left and a little bit down where the hot spot on the high beam, and it rises up above the cutoff where the low cuts off. It's kind of a rounder shape, and it rises up above that a little bit. So that's kind of what our pattern is currently. We'll change these bulbs out and see what happens. Well, the first thing we've got to do on the Kawasaki is remove these tank side panels here. They've got 1 screw on each of them, and then they just pull off. They just come off and snap out of grommets. So we'll get those off, and then we'll move on from there. We've got our side panels off, our tank side panels off on both sides there. And now we're going to remove these cowl panels on the front lower. And the way we do that, there's two Allen headed bolts here that hold these on. You can see them in here. There's one here and one here. A pair of them there. So we'll take those 2 out, and then it snaps in at the top, and then all we have to do is unplug the turn signal wire, and those will come right out. We'll get both sides of these off. The next thing we need to do on this Kawasaki, of course your bike will be totally different depending on what you're doing this on, but on the Kawasaki we're actually going to pull this headlight assembly off. To do this, it'll just be easier to film and easier to do. So to get that headlight cowling unit off of there, we're going to remove the windshield. Got a couple of bolts here and here. That'll come off, and then we'll take this cover off, this lower cover right here, a couple of screws. then there's a mount for this bracket we'll take loose. Okay, to get this headlight assembly, this cowling off the front, we've got a few screws to take loose here. We've got a screw here and here on the front, and then there's also a couple of push pins right above the screws we take loose. There on the front. On the side down here on either side, this is your headlight plug right here where the headlights plug in. This was our side marker light plug. And then this is the headlight. It's black on this side and white on the other side for your headlights. Unplug those. We've got a bolt here for this cowling piece. And there's also a push pin right underneath here, right behind this bolt back here. You take out, and then there's one more on top. And it is right here on the inside here. Kind of hard to see. So we'll get those out and see if we can slide that assembly forward. And I think there's a couple of a plug to unplug when we get it slid forward. We got all the bolts out. I've kind of pulled the housing forward here, and there are two more wires to unplug. It's the side marker lights in the edges of the headlights here. There's marker lights here and on the other side. So that's what these are. And they just unplug like the others. You just push the tab down and pull them out. There's one there, and there's one on this side too, over here. So undo those, and the whole housing just comes right off. Really simple, not bad at all. It's not hard to get to. So we'll get this on the bench and see about changing these bulbs. All right, we've got our cowling sitting here on the bench. And I kind of propped it up so I can get some light and the camera in here on it. But here's our headlights. The backs of them here, and they've got little covers on them that just pull off like that, like so. So we'll pull that off. All right, so here's our bulb here. We pulled the connector off of it. The way that this particular bulb retains, I've got a little wire that holds it in. You just push it down and out of its little clip right here, and then it'll lift up, and then my bulb will come out like that. You can see that it's keyed. It's got a flat portion here that has to go like that. In that, kind of look at these, and I was concerned about the placement of the LED. The LEDs, the distance that they are from the mount here, to see if they're similar to where the filament in this halogen bulb is. These headlight housings are, the placement of the filament in the housing is they're designed for that to be in a very specific spot for that housing to reflect properly. And it looks like to me it's pretty close. It might be just a smudge in just a little bit farther, but not much. So there's a good chance this may work. It may project similar to how these projected. And these go in the same thing. It's got the flat spot, the flat part here that will go in like that. The instructions that came with these said that the mount needs to be oriented vertically in your housing, so that's going to orient them vertically. And I believe these are adjustable. You can turn these just a little bit. So if we need to adjust them after they're in there, we can turn these. But I'm going to put them in where they'll be straight up and down for now. There it goes. I went ahead and I cut a hole out here in the back of my cover. And I know it opened the headlight housing up to moisture, but these things have got to have airflow to dissipate heat. They get hot. And these housing, there's not any direct moisture going to get to it. They are vented. There's two vents on each side, on each housing, on each side to grab air and bring it into the housing. So it's getting outside air anyhow. I think we're going to be all right. We'll just have to see. So I went ahead and did that, and then I mounted, they gave me some couple of strips of sticky back foam tape to mount the controller with. I stuck it here on the side of the back of the housing here, and then I plugged in my connector into the lead. Now some bulbs are polarity sensitive, and some of them are set up to where they're not. So we'll just have to see if the bulb doesn't burn. I'll have to unplug it and turn it around. When we get them all burning, I'll go ahead and tape this up real good with electrical tape, keep any moisture out of it. Okay, so I'll get the other side done here, and then we'll set the cowling back on the bike, kind of get it in place, and make sure plug our bulbs up, make sure they're burning, get them burning, and then we'll see how the test pattern looks on the garage door before we button everything up. Okay, I went ahead and installed the other bulb, and I've set my headlight housing back in place and put four bolts that hold it in place. I've got it bolted back up. I haven't put any of the covers or anything on. I just want to check it and see compared to what it was before. So let's take a look here and see how our pattern's looking. This will be our low beam, and it looks really similar to the previous pattern. I can see that it cuts off abruptly over here at on the left. If you look at the leftmost piece of tape, you can kind of see the edge of it, and I think that's the housing that keeps it from getting into the oncoming traffic so bad. Nice arc, about the same level of the cutoff, and it looks like it goes maybe over to the right a little more. The arc does. And the hot spot, if you look at the low, that's about the piece of tape with the L on it there. That is about where the hot spot is, same as the other one, as the halogen. Let's go to the high beam now. Woo! And again, the hot spot there on the high is real close to the piece of tape, just maybe 4 or 5 inches to the right maybe of where it was with the halogen, which I think is fine. Same level, and you can see the arc goes up above the cutoff on the low, just same as the halogen. So I think the pattern is real similar here. I think this is going to work just fine. And that's due to the design of the bulb. The elements on the LED are placed in the same spot as the filament was on the halogen inside the housing when it's mounted up, and that's what makes your pattern, that's what makes the housing direct the light the way it's supposed to. That is where those elements are, those LEDs, or the filament if you're using a halogen. It's got to be where it's designed to be in the housing, and I believe these are. This is going to work nice, I think. Quite a bit brighter, especially that high. That thing's really bright. Well, that about wraps it up on the headlight conversion, the LED conversion for the Kawasaki Versys 1000 here. We've got the Beam Tech fanless LED headlights installed, and the pattern looks really good. Matches the original pattern that the halogens had. So if they'll last, you know, if they'll not burn out and work, why, I think we got a good project there. Appreciate you all coming and hanging out with me, and we'll catch you next time. Ride safe.